The millionaire stopped his car at the edge of the long country driveway and stared toward the house in complete shock. Rain poured softly across the fields. The porch lights glowed in the darkness. And through the large farmhouse window, he saw something that made his heart stop. His nanny was sitting on the kitchen floor surrounded by crayons, flour, and cookie dough. One of his twin boys was laughing so hard he could barely breathe. The other was asleep peacefully against her shoulder. And the woman he had hired only to watch his children, was quietly teaching them how to feel loved again. The millionaire slowly lowered his hand from the steering wheel. Because for the first time since his wife died, his house no longer looked empty. Before we begin, welcome to Corner of Kind Choices, where emotional stories remind us that kindness still changes lives every single day. If stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us continue sharing heartfelt stories that inspire people around the world. Now let's begin. Alexander Hale had everything most people dreamed about. At 43 years old, he owned one of the largest agricultural companies in America. His ranch-style estate outside Montana stretched across hundreds of acres of land. He had luxury cars, private planes, and more money than he could spend in a lifetime. But none of it mattered anymore. 2 years earlier, his wife Claire died from breast cancer. And after her death, silence filled every corner of the house. Alexander buried himself in work to avoid the pain. He traveled constantly, attended endless business meetings, and stayed away from home as much as possible. Meanwhile, his 8-year-old twin boys slowly became strangers to him. Lucas stopped talking much. Ethan became angry all the time. Teachers complained about fighting at school. Caretakers kept quitting after only weeks. The mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a place full of grief nobody knew how to face. Finally, Alexander's assistant convinced him to hire another nanny. "She's different," his assistant insisted. Her name was Sophia Bennett. She was 31 years old and had worked with children for nearly a decade. Before becoming a nanny, she had volunteered at hospitals helping sick children through art therapy and emotional support programs. When Alexander first met her, he looked exhausted and uninterested. "I'll be honest," he said coldly. "The boys are difficult." Sophia smiled gently. "Difficult children are usually hurting children." That answer caught him off guard. Still, he hired her mostly because he had no other options. The first few weeks were rough. Lucas ignored her completely. Ethan intentionally misbehaved to push her away. They threw food. Refused bedtime. Argued constantly. One afternoon, Ethan even screamed, "You're not our mom." Most caretakers would have quit immediately. But Sophia simply knelt to his level and whispered softly, "I know." The little boy froze in confusion. Then Sophia added something that changed everything. "But I can still care about you." That night, for the first time in months, Ethan cried himself to sleep instead of throwing things. Slowly, little things began changing around the house. The twins started drawing again. Music played softly in the kitchen some mornings. Sophia convinced the boys to help plant vegetables in Claire's forgotten garden. And every evening, she read stories aloud until both boys fell asleep. But Alexander barely noticed any of it. He was too busy running from his grief. One Friday afternoon, Alexander returned unexpectedly from a cancelled business trip. The rainstorm outside made the long drive home feel even lonelier than usual. As he approached the farmhouse, he expected the same silence waiting for him. Instead, he heard laughter. Real laughter. It stopped him immediately. Then he looked through the kitchen window and saw the scene that shattered his heart. Sophia sat cross-legged on the floor helping the boys decorate homemade cookies. Flour covered everyone. Lucas was smiling. Actually smiling. And little Ethan, who hadn't willingly hugged anyone in nearly a year, had fallen asleep peacefully against Sophia's shoulder while she softly hummed a lullaby. Alexander stood frozen in the rain. He couldn't remember the last time his home looked warm. Then he noticed something else. On the kitchen wall behind them hung a drawing made in messy crayons. It showed 4 people holding hands in front of the farmhouse. One figure had angel wings. Claire. The other 3 figures were smiling beside Sophia. And written across the top were the words, "Family still lives here." Alexander felt tears burn his eyes instantly. He quietly entered the house. The twins looked up first. "Dad." Lucas ran toward him excitedly. That alone shocked Alexander. For months, his children barely reacted when he came home. But now Lucas hugged him tightly. "You're back early." Alexander hugged him carefully, still stunned. Then Ethan woke up sleepily on Sophia's shoulder and rubbed his eyes. "Daddy." Alexander looked at Sophia. "I didn't know you baked." Sophia smiled awkwardly. "Actually, I'm terrible at it." Lucas laughed loudly. "She burned the first batch." For the first time in years, laughter filled the kitchen naturally. And Alexander suddenly realized how much he had been missing. That evening, after the boys went to bed, Alexander found Sophia cleaning quietly in the kitchen. "You don't have to clean this mess tonight," he said softly. Sophia smiled tiredly. "I don't mind." Alexander hesitated before speaking again. "They seem happier." Sophia stopped wiping the counter. "They miss their father." The words hit him hard. Alexander looked down silently. "I've been trying," he whispered. "I know. But nothing feels enough anymore." Sophia studied him carefully. Then she asked gently, "When was the last time you allowed yourself to grieve with them instead of hiding from it?" Alexander didn't answer. Because the truth was, he couldn't remember. That night, Alexander passed the twins' bedroom and heard Sophia speaking softly inside. Curious, he stopped near the doorway. Lucas sounded upset. "What if Mom forgets us in heaven?" Alexander's chest tightened painfully. But Sophia answered calmly. "Mothers don't forget their children. But we can't see her anymore." There was silence for a moment. Then Sophia whispered something beautiful. "Love doesn't disappear just because someone is gone. Sometimes love stays behind in different ways." "How?" Sophia smiled softly. "In memories. In kindness. In the people who keep caring for us." Alexander quietly stepped away before they noticed him crying. The next morning, something unexpected happened. Alexander cancelled all his meetings. Instead of leaving for work, he sat at the breakfast table with his sons. The boys looked surprised. "You're staying home?" Ethan asked. "For today," Alexander replied. Sophia smiled quietly from the kitchen. That day changed everything. They rode horses together through the fields. They planted flowers in Claire's garden. And for the first time since losing his wife, Alexander spoke openly about her with the boys. At sunset, they sat together on the porch wrapped in blankets. Lucas leaned against his father quietly. "Mom loved sunsets." Alexander nodded with tears in his eyes. "She really did." Then Ethan asked softly, "Why were you gone all the time?" The question hurt deeply because it came from honesty, not anger. Alexander swallowed hard. "Because I thought working would stop me from hurting." Lucas looked confused. "Did it help?" Alexander looked at both boys carefully. "No," he whispered. "It only made me miss more time with the people I love." The twins hugged him tightly after that. And for the first time in years, Alexander cried openly in front of his children. Not weak tears. Healing tears. Weeks passed, and the farmhouse slowly transformed. Movie nights returned. Family dinners became normal again. The boys laughed louder. and Alexander slowly stopped treating work like a hiding place. One snowy afternoon, Alexander found Sophia repairing Ethan's torn stuffed bear carefully by the fireplace. "You've done more for this family than I ever expected," he admitted quietly. Sophia smiled softly. "They didn't need perfection." She looked toward the boys playing nearby. "They just needed someone willing to stay." That sentence stayed in Alexander's heart forever. Months later, during a school event, Lucas proudly introduced Sophia to his teacher. "This is Sophia," he said happily. "She helped our family smile again." Alexander overheard the comment and suddenly realized something life-changing. Kindness is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like bedtime stories. Burned cookies. A patient voice during difficult nights. Or someone choosing to love hurting children even when they push everyone away. Before Sophia arrived, Alexander thought money could solve almost anything. But kindness succeeded where wealth failed completely. Because kindness reached the broken parts of his family that money never could. And sometimes, the people who save us do not arrive dramatically. Sometimes they quietly walk into our homes carrying cookie dough, bedtime stories, and enough love to help broken hearts heal again. Thank you for spending this time with us here on Corner of Kind Choices. And remember this. People rarely need perfect lives. They need patience. They need love. They need kindness strong enough to stay through the difficult moments. Because even the smallest act of care can slowly bring a hurting family back to life.